Mickey Mouse is a reference to the oldest clown archetype, with his body painted all black and his face painted all white. In a dark setting, it would give him the appearance of being a floating head, along with big white floating hands, big yellow floating shoes, and the iconic red Superman boxers. This hero clown is one of the representations of the god of wisdom. This is gonna be my worst video, total garbage information here. I always say don't take these videos seriously, they're just stories, but this is really just a theory. Kind of an epiphany I had while working on the History is a Lie series. My theory is that the original clown character was a way for ancient humans to convey messages from their ancestors from beyond the realm of the living. The ancient clown would both bestow people with divine wisdom, as well as serve as a reminder to not take life seriously. So, as an agent of wisdom and a revealer of truth, the clown is almost a representation of a man who remembers death, yet is himself beyond the reach of death's grasp. A character who slips through time and history, pulling the rug out from the established paradigms. And I know that I can't really prove this theory, but the clown is so important culturally and in the esoteric that I'm absolutely convinced that this tradition is beyond ancient. And I just thought that I could use this as an opportunity to show you the way that I break down myths and investigate my theories. So really just stick around if you want to laugh. Like Superman always said, laughter is the best medicine. Wait, that was Superman that said that, right? Man goes to doctor, says he's depressed, says life seems harsh and cruel, says he feels all alone in a threatening world where what lies ahead is vague and uncertain. Doctor says, treatment is simple. Great clown Pagliacci is in town. Go and see him. That will cheer you up. The man bursts into tears, says, but doctor, I am Pagliacci. Good joke. Everybody laughs. Roll on snare drum. Curtains. Who watches the watchers? Who heals the healers? Who saves the savior? This is the main theme of the Watchmen story. The character Rorschach is investigating a string of events surrounding the murder of an old hero called the Comedian. Rorschach is essentially the main character, more or less, so he serves as the clown of the main narrative. The Comedian was like the clown of his day. His story is revealed through flashbacks, and both characters kind of develop together as Rorschach uncovers the truth about the Watchmen and the events of the Comedian's past. The Comedian is much like a mashup of all of Robert De Niro's characters, like from Deer Hunter and Taxi Driver, that I discussed in my last video. Disillusioned by the American government through his involvement in the Vietnam War, as well as policing disgruntled American citizens, the Comedian famously said, with tears rolling down his face, "It's all one big joke." Though Rorschach isn't himself a comedian, he is definitely the funniest character in the story through situational humor. He depends on that mask. He even refers to it as his face. The black and white pattern on his face is not just to denote his role as clown, but the moving Rorschach test on his face represents the way that he sees the world. The obvious metaphor is that Rorschach has unique insight. He looks at the entire world through the lens of a giant Rorschach test. He sees everything differently. This is the single most important role of the clown. The clown is not just the only one who tells us the truth, the clown is the only one who can even really see the truth. A gift and a curse. Rorschach is a total loner. He lost his connection with humanity. Abused by his mother growing up, he became extremely sensitive to the injustices that he sees in the world. He's also vividly aware of how close his society is to total collapse. Rorschach even spends his days trying to warn everyone that the world is coming to an end. What a unique character. Rorschach becomes disillusioned with the Watchmen when he discovers that they're involved in a plot to lie to the entire world in order to save the world from beginning World War III. Rorschach refuses to live by the lie, even if it means world peace. And for refusing to turn his back on his principles, he dies. Spoilers. In the end, Rorschach doesn't refuse to play along with the lie that saves humanity just because he's morally bound to the truth. It's because he's also bound to justice. The lie doesn't just trick humanity into believing a false paradigm of peace. The lie also covers up all of the evil that got them into that near-war situation in the first place. Rorschach cannot live with the lie, implying he would have no choice but to spread the truth. Heartbroken, he demands to be destroyed. The tragic clown. My favorite clown, of course, is the Joker. And though I agree Batman is cool, it has less to do with how perfect and awesome Batman himself is and more to do with his villains. Batman's villains represent his own inner demons. In Burton's Batman, he focuses on trolling the wealthy, contaminating their expensive beauty products, breaking the banks, destroying art. He demonstrates how society desperately clings onto order, beauty, status, and he shows them how their adherence to this gives them a false sense of security. All of the Jokers kind of show that one bad day can turn a man evil, or one bad day can turn a city on its head. The Joker's even dating a disfigured woman to demonstrate that his values are completely different from those of society. His contrarian nature serves an important purpose. In Nolan's Batman, this comes to a head when Batman has to take on the role of the villain. Batman and Joker's relationship almost telling the story of the necessary villain. Something that I've talked about before, the importance of the bad guy in comedy. The bad guy offends people out of their comfort zone to help them see the truth. And most of the Jokers go through a similar death and rebirth process, usually with a baptism in chemicals, which both physically transform his body into the undead monster that we recognize, as well as twisting his mind. Tim Burton and the people putting together his projects really seem to understand the archetype of the clown. The best example of a good-hearted, well-meaning undead clown is Jack Skellington. So prolific, he's associated with two holidays, Halloween and Christmas. There's no other man to whom this could be a reference: Jesus. Jesus' feast day is during Halloween, and we observe his birth on Christmas Day. The first time we ever see Jack Skellington is actually in the film Beetlejuice. It's so poetic to see Michael Keaton both play the Great Clown in Beetlejuice as well as play against the Great Clown in Batman. Beetlejuice, Beetlejuice, Beetlejuice. Why do we say it 3 times? Those 3 blessings are a reference to the 3 stars of Orion's belt. In fact, Beetlejuice is literally named after a point in the constellation Orion that we call Orion's Beetlejuice. So again, this is making a clear reference to that god of death and rebirth that I constantly discuss on this channel. The great hero in the sky, the son of Adam, or the Green Man. Beetlejuice is also accompanied with sandworms. Worms, snakes, and serpents can sometimes be a reference to knowledge, but in the case of this film, I think that it also represents the apocalypse. There's a ton of other esoteric imagery in this film and others like it. Hopefully the more I cover entertainment in general, the better I can explain what all of these things mean. Like a checkered floor usually represents crossing through the veil or crossing into another realm. When you see a checkered floor in a film, one of the main characters will either go through a major change in that moment, or the world around him will change in some way, even if only in perspective. In Beetlejuice, the checkered floor is in hell and leads to a permanent death room. In the Joker film, Joker dances dances on a checkered floor right after killing the Wall Street traders, signifying that he's officially transforming from the innocent street clown into the villain we all know today. Jack Skellington is well-meaning, maybe even a loving character, but by the end of his story, he's done as much or more damage to the world as his evil counterparts. But I believe he also teaches his world the exact same lesson about truth and beauty. Jack Skellington is the dead god, just like Adam or Osiris is the dead god. The lesson the dead god teaches us is that beauty and perfection are fleeting. Jack's dog Spot has a glowing red nose like Rudolph. Spot and Rudolph are both references to the constellation Canis Major and his red nose, the Dog Star Sirius. Like I described in the Fallen Angels video, in the ancient legends, Sirius would be Odin's dog Fenrir, but would also represent the head of the god of wisdom that various heroes would carry in their stories. This is also why the Grinch has a dog. The Grinch is much less a clown though, and much more just a straight up depiction of the Green Man. There are so many Green Man characters who follow the clown archetype though. Jack's love interest Sally is also disfigured like Joker's girlfriend, again showing that the great clown breaks conventions and sees beauty differently. These are references to Mary Magdalene, who was a misfit just like the rest of Jesus' followers. The clown does not love fantasy like Christmas, which is based on lies and make-believe, and the clown does not love false vanity. The clown sees things differently. The clown sees inner beauty. The Joker finds beauty only in the truth. The loss and decay of real beauty against the world of false vanity is one of the main themes in Beetlejuice. We have this old rustic home with lots of character in a small cozy town, juxtaposed against fancy big city folks who roll in and corrupt the home with ugly modern art, constantly lying to themselves and about themselves and the world that they live in. Lydia is the Sally of this story, as she is nothing like her arrogant, eccentric parents, but she's also nothing like the deceased homeowners who want the home to go back to normal. Lydia dresses dark like a goth, and in reality, she is much more like Beetlejuice, which is why Beetlejuice tries to force her to marry him at the end of the film. The dynamic's a little different in Nightmare Before Christmas, as Jack seems more aloof or evasive to the idea of committing to Sally, too distracted and focused on what he believes is important. Jack is innocent in corrupting the world because he just wanted to give everyone a more honest, beautiful, loving Christmas. He didn't understand that the world wouldn't see the truth the way he does. The lesson we learn with these clowns is that most people live completely blind to the fact that society is not perfect. They remain willfully ignorant, covering everything in fancy glitz and glamour, shiny wrapping paper and puffy bows. But underneath those packages, the world is rotting, and that's what the children learn when they open their presents. These wrappings we put on the world create a sense of perfection that is a complete lie, and by living that lie, you're ignoring and denying the experience and existence of people who have no choice but to live in that rot in decay. Jack Skellington shows us that society has a singular strategy for hiding imperfection. And for that very reason, today's society will always fail to maintain perfection. Okay, so we have a basic idea of what the ancient clown archetype looks like, but what does it mean? And where does it come from? Who were the original clowns? I think the first thing most people think about when they hear the word clown is something like this guy, the children's entertainer. It was this guy, the children's entertainer, that got me thinking about how the clown evolved and what it must have been in ancient times. I think we all have a memory of being out in public, maybe at the circus or something, and when the clowns started coming out to tease the children, inevitably one of the kids would start to cry out of fear. To some people, all clowns are scary. But why is that? And why are both realities true? Clowns are both a cultural staple that we can never get rid of, but they're also terrifying to a significant percentage of the population. What the fuck even is a clown? This is the question to which I really needed to find the answer. I cannot tell you how many times I've heard somebody say that the medieval court jester was among the first clowns that ever existed. There is no way in hell that that tradition is only 1,000 years old. I saw far too many archetypes in ancient legends to suggest that the trickster, Joker character has been around, has been a staple of these stories for thousands of years, maybe even for as long as we've been sharing legends. A character like Loki, for example, doesn't just show up out of nowhere. Not only that, but tribal elders, healers, witches, shaman, they've all been wearing face paint forever. That has to have something to do with where this tradition comes from. I only bring this up because another point that got me thinking about the ancient great clown was the very concept of wearing face paint or makeup. The Book of Enoch claims that it was the fallen angels or the Nephilim offspring who taught humanity to use makeup and face paint. A little while back, I remembered watching a mini doc about the skull cult of Göbekli Tepe. And I tried to argue a few times in my history series that Göbekli Tepe was one of the places where these fallen angels taught humanity how to civilize. And we know through archaeology that most of the earliest civilizations in Turkey followed what we call a skull cult. In fact, several cultures around the world today still preserve remains of their deceased loved ones. Even many of you keep grandma in an urn on the mantle. That's not at all different. That's the exact same thing. That's normal human behavior. And the skull cult is likely one of the earliest versions of this. Well, not only did archaeologists find skulls that seem to have been stored under the floors of certain structures in Göbekli Tepe, but there are carvings that depict headless bodies either running around or dancing. The safe assumption we can make from these findings is that the families of the deceased would keep the heads in the realm of the living as a memento and a way to keep their family around, and they would allow the bodies to go off into the land of the dead, or whatever holding area their afterlife would be. The Göbekli Tepeans actually worshipped their ancestors, and one of the jobs of the shaman was to take happy juice, climb into a hole, and to communicate with people on the other side. Sometimes those people were divine, and sometimes those people were supposed to be ancestors. The shaman was supposed to be an intermediary, or it's possible he was even directly channeling messages from ancestors, speaking as if he himself is being controlled by people's own dead loved ones, or perhaps even by deceased rulers or deceased heroes. They might come back to tell stories of their old victories. Perhaps the clown was the person who told all of these ancient myths, and everyone in the tribe believed that the clown was the one that had the closest connection to their ancestors, giving them that ability to channel their ancestors. I think that it's clear that these hero clowns perfectly fit the fallen angel archetype, but not just any fallen angel, Earth's greatest hero, the dead god Adam. And as time would go on, his role would likely be played by other giants. So thinking about why clowns are scary, what got me thinking about this was I remembered an old lecture from my media class like 20 years ago describing rules of clowning. I don't know, I'm not gonna look this up, but they made so much sense. Clowns are supposed to stick to strict guidelines about what they're not allowed to do with makeup on their face, because there is stuff that is considered scary. One of those things being that it's recommended that a clown not use any blue makeup, especially around the eye, and that a clown is never to use sharp corners, like points on a smile. Joaquin Phoenix's makeup in the Joker film breaks both of these rules. You'll probably notice that most evil clowns, ones that are designed to be intentionally scary or unsettling, usually have blue features and sharp points in their makeup. And in the lecture, I remember I was told that clowns already have white makeup, and when you add blue shading and pointy features, that a clown will begin to mimic the look of a dead body. And then my teacher said, most people who have a phobia of clowns are subconsciously reacting to the shock of seeing what looks like a corpse walking around. And when I remembered that, I thought back to Göbekli Tepe's skull cult, and assuming that that story of the fallen angels and the makeup is true, and we're all gonna assume that, and Göbekli Tepe really was where sapiens were taught how to build civilizations and how to use makeup, well, they were probably using makeup on their deceased loved ones, right? So this part's kind of gross, but I need to describe the skull cult ritual. First, they would apparently bury the entire body, and then after it decayed a certain period, they would remove just the head and then let the rest of the body continue. Or they might cremate it. So if they're putting makeup on the person before they bury them, well, imagine what it looks like when they're removing the head. The eyes will be pulled up and the lips will be pulled back, causing the blue eyeshadow to become wide and pointy and pulling the red lipstick into a big grin. When they would put grandma on the mantle, it would look exactly like the Joker. And I'm betting that shaman would intentionally paint their faces to look exactly like those skulls would look when they came out of the ground, when they would mimic or channel their ancestors. I think that that's literally the point, that a clown is supposed to represent a dead body or even a head floating around, perhaps even the head of the god of wisdom reincarnated to enlighten us with divinely inspired wisdom and insight. And then by the time we get to the medieval period, this is why the king is not allowed to execute the jester for insulting him, because it's an ancient tradition, an ancient rite that he's not allowed to break. The jester represents a divine presence that demands truth. There are rules on that royal level, and I demand that they still be upheld, god damn it. So I hope I really hammered home the point of the importance of the black and white clown, what it must have represented historically, because I'm really excited to show you the final piece of the puzzle. I'd like to turn to the Aboriginal Hopi tribe of Arizona. I think it's really important that we ask the question, how did a clown get to the Americas before the first European explorers? That's right, the Hopi tribe have their own black and white clown, and what's most fascinating is that his purpose is identical to all the other black and white clowns that I've described. During ceremonies and events, when groups of the tribe would be dancing or playing through some ritual, a small handful of people also from the tribe would show up painted in black and white, and they would actively troll and tease everyone while they were going through the motions of their ceremony, taunting them, knocking over decorations, foiling their efforts, doing pratfalls, stealing attention from the audience. When we normally think of what a tribal ceremony would look like, I think most of us picture something very serious. But this clown's purpose is to actively remind everyone in the tribe that life is not perfect, that no matter how well we plan things, no matter what decisions we make, no matter how committed we are to perfection, perfection is a fallacy. Life is not ever going to be perfect. Don't take things so seriously. So, what is the best thing that we can do when we experience these failures in life? We laugh. So how far back does the clown go? I think all the way back to the beginning. I hope you can see why I couldn't make a normal History is a Lie video with this subject. With those, I can take recorded legends and match them with archaeological finds and art to piece together a narrative for you guys, but all I got here is a bunch of ideas and scraps and memories from 20 years ago and shit. I just wanted to show you how I work these ideas out in my head, I guess. But I know that I can't be far off. There are more signs that there's significance to this style of makeup. Oh god, I almost forgot. There's different kinds of clowns that serve different purposes. clowns, only one is tearing around. I guess I don't really need to go through them all. The point is, it's just a very versatile role in our culture. A clown can be a serious warrior, a poet, a wizard, or a king, or they can just be absurd. Some clowns are defined by their inability to be defined, like the clown who changes faces. The sad clown has a role too, as that mask helps us remember in our times of happiness that there are others around us who are silently suffering with grief or hardship, keeping us mindful of how we treat strangers. Display patience with people. A day will come when that is you. Even though the great clown, the clown I'm always referencing, is technically the Satan of Job, in my eyes, there's only really one truly evil clown. A clown who doesn't channel wisdom from our ancestors, choosing instead to serve a worldly master. A clown whom is insincerely friendly and welcoming in an attempt to elicit trust from impressionable children in the name of greed. The clown taking your money and feeding you sodium, fat, processed meat, and corn syrup. The corporate clown is the worst of them all. And I almost forgot. Happy holidays!